Hello, I'm Brian Cox. Welcome to People of Science. Jo, could you introduce yourself and your work?
I'm Jo Haigh. I'm Professor of Atmospheric Physics at Imperial College London and also Co-Director of the Grantham Institute on Climate Change. My work concerns the processes that contribute to why the atmosphere and climate are as they are.
This is a series about inspirational scientists in history. So who is your person of science?
My person of science is Lewis Fry Richardson, a mathematician who used his insight into mathematics to apply to all sorts of problems, but particularly problems of the atmosphere. He designed a scheme which he called a forecast factory, which was essentially going to be forecasting the weather. This is long before there were any computers, so it was entirely in his mind how these things could work. He conceptualised this thing. He referred to it as like being inside the Albert Hall, where the North Pole is in the top and the equator's around the side, and the other pole's in the orchestra pit. And you've got it marked out into squares, and at each square sits a computer. Now, a computer is not a machine as we know them, it's a person who's doing a calculation. And then people either side of that person would know the solutions, and they would pass their solutions around. This is just like a numerical forecast that we do today. But he worked out how many people it would require. It's probably about 3,000 or more people to actually do that calculation.
It's quite a wonderful vision, isn't it, to have this Albert Hall-sized building full of 3,000 people synced together.
And he did this over a period of 2 years, so it's certainly not a realistic way of doing weather forecasts. Unfortunately, also, the forecast was wrong. It was way out. But he was so convinced that this was a method that would work that he published it in the Royal Society papers, and he also published it in a book. And nowadays they're essentially the same equations. So we're using the same models, but we run them lots and lots of times to get a statistical picture of what might happen into the future. So I think what we got here is his personal record of his life for the Royal Society's biographical memoirs. And it's written, and he's 71 years old, and he's looking back at his career and what was important to him. Quite soon after he finished his first degree at Cambridge, he decided he wanted to learn more about statistics. So he sold all his physics books and went to study statistics at UCL.
The portrait you're painting of Richardson is of someone, obviously a very good mathematician and a good physicist, but also an experimental scientist.
Yes.
When measurement needed to be made,
Yes.
he was interested.
Yeah, he did that as well. He wasn't just a pure mathematician.
When did he start his academic career?
So he did his degree in Cambridge, and after that it appears that he wasn't really quite sure what he was going to do, and he had a number of different little jobs here and there.
So he wasn't a traditional academic in a sense. He didn't have a university career. Why did he not take up a chair at a university?
Of course, it was the First World War. He was a Quaker and a conscientious objector. So in the war, he didn't fight, but he was on the ambulance service, running out into no man's land and collecting people who were injured to take them back for treatment. They were in the trenches suffering from the mud and the rats and the shells and all the rest of it in exactly the same way as the active troops. And yet, because you were a conscientious objector, you refused to actually fight, you were considered a coward. Anyone who was a conscientious objector was then barred from having a university post, so by doing that affected his career quite seriously. I knew about his numerical weather prediction, and that's why I sort of started being interested in him in the first place. But the whole time he's working, he's got this other strand going on. What he wanted to do was spend the first half of his career doing physics, and the second half of the career doing something of use to humanity. After I understood about his moral values, I just thought he's a real hero. And you could see this strand of things right the way through.
I suppose the ultimate expression of his work would be a computerised weather forecast. That's what he was actually doing, although he didn't know it at the time in the 1920s.
Yeah.
Did he live to see it?
Absolutely. So the first numerical forecast was published in 1950. He didn't die till 1953. He was aware of the forecast and he thought it was a great day for meteorology, and indeed he was right.